This is Nothing But Fine Bible Talk, and I'm Emily Trotter. Thanks for being here. Today is going to be more story time. It's interesting. I'm doing, you're doing it with me. We're all in this together. We're looking at women in the Bible, kind of because I wanted to get I wanted to get a clearer picture of what exactly it is we do. And why we are the way we are, why we were created, why were we created, what was our purpose, and some of the women that we look to and see throughout Scripture to kind of give us an idea on how to model ourselves after. So what we do, what we've been doing is that we've talked about Eve, we've talked about Deborah, we've talked about Ruth. Today we're going to talk about Esther. And then we'll get into some other things because, there's a few more left after this. The reason that I started this talk was to talk about, because we get a bad, well, I don't want to say we get a bad rap, not women, but Christians, believers get a bad rap for what we think women should be. And I was reminded of this recently because I was watching, Monday Night Football with my husband, or Sunday Night Football with my husband, and that kicker for the Chiefs who is a devout Catholic and went to a Catholic college, and famously said in a speech last year, to those girls, this still blows my mind. This was in poor taste for him, I think, but most people think whatever, get over it. But I guess he does a good job, so they're willing to overlook it. That goes into cancel culture, and he shouldn't be canceled, but I did want him to miss the field goal that I watched him kick. But anyway, I digress. He famously said to the women of this graduating class, because he was speaking at a commencement, he was a commencement speaker. And so these women, they're about to graduate. He was like, "That's great that you've gotten," and I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact words. It's great that you've gotten these degrees, but your greatest calling, it won't be anything like being in the home and taking care of your family. And I'm so thankful for my wife. She is behind me, and at home I can do what I do because I know that she's at home taking care of everybody, blah, 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 blah. To be honest, I have heard Jim say that same statement, not in a condescending kind of way. And I'm sure that he didn't mean it the way that it came across. However, there is this, feeling around Christian women, and their sometimes overbearing husbands, I guess, that we are to be quiet, and we are to be submissive, and we are to be at home and only at home, and that is about all that we can do. And I have heard Jim say about me, because of Emily and what she does at home, I can go and travel and do the things that I need to do for business. We don't often, we are usually together when we travel and go off, okay? Unless he's working. So I understand the sentiment behind it. However, I just thought it would be a good time to look at what God says about women and how he looks at us and how he foresees us being involved in the part that we have to play in his kingdom while we're living out our time here on earth. And so we know, yes, women can be strong. Yes, anything you can do, I can do better. That kind of song deal. But we shouldn't be dismissed or discouraged, right? And I am first to say I hate the term feminist because I'm all about we can do things, but goodness gracious, you better open my door for me. And I really like when I get up from a table, I really like the men to stand. That's just respectful. Maybe I'm just Southern. I don't know. I'm not backwards. I just prefer, I like those manners that we have and that I teach my own sons. And it's not to belittle females. It's just to show them some respect, right? So in Esther, it's a great story. And I didn't realize this. Why did I not know this? Because we talked about Ruth and Esther are the only two books of the Bible that are named for women and whose main characters are women. Fascinating. The only two of all the books in the Bible, there's only those two. And I don't know about the Catholic Bible. I don't know if any of those are women or not, those extra books that they have. But um, so Esther took place in a time that, so it's called the diaspora. There's this, when that means the, what is it? It means those are the people that are dispersed. The Israelites are dispersed because there came a time when they were taken into captivity and they were in exile. And so this is after the Babylonian captivity, where some of the Jews have gone back to the Holy Land. They've made their way back to Jerusalem. This story takes place in Persia. So Esther and a lot of Jews were still behind in Persia. They just decided they'd stay. And so Esther is a Jewess, very beautiful. Her parents had died, and that she was left in the care of her cousin slash uncle Mordecai. Okay, and there was a big age difference there. But so they lived under the reign of, the Greek name is Xerxes. The Hebrew name I can't pronounce. It's got too many letters next to each other. That sounds ridiculous. It's got too many vowels and not enough consonants for me. So we're going to go with Xerxes, which is the Greek name of him. And he is the son of Darius the First, who had a very long reign and was very successful. He only had one major failure, and that was trying to attack Greece, and that didn't go well. And then his son, so Xerxes, came into power, and he was just kind of living off his dad's coattails and enjoying what his dad had done. He also tried to invade Greece, and that did not go well for him either. So, as we have seen in some of our other discussions here on Bible Talk, the rulers like to have these, big feasts where they could show off all their stuff and look and say, look how wonderful we are. Look at all of our things. Isn't this wonderful? So they'd have these big parties. Well, at the beginning of Esther, we see that one of these gatherings is happening. And usually there was, the king had his gathering, and then there was this other one, and then the queen also had one, so that they were separated. And so Xerxes calls for his queen, whose name is Vashti, and he calls for her to come, and he wants to show her off or whatever it was he wanted to do. And she said, no, I'm busy, I'm not coming. And he was mad about that, mad. It made him look bad. And so he banished her. And he had this advisor that was like, you got to get rid of this woman because she just made you look real stupid, and you need to put her in her place. So you need to tell her you are no longer the queen and banish her somewhere. Get rid of her, exile her, get her out of here. And that will send a message. That's going to send a message to all the other women and wives here. Do you think that do you think that showed any? Do you think that really kind of put the fear in the women? I don't know. Probably. I mean, it was that was kind of the deal, right? That's what we've been talking about, and these times, like when we talked about Deborah. I mean, she was unexpected because, I mean, kind of humiliating that this group was being led by a woman. I mean, like, what does that say about them? I mean, guys. This is it. This is the best you got, is this woman. So we have this idea of what we were, of how women were looked upon in this time. And so the fact that even Vashti would be like, I'm not coming. I'm busy. I got this. I'm throwing my own party, and we're in the middle of something, telling a great story right now, or I'm about to hear some really good tea. So she didn't come, and they decided that she had to be banished, and there she went. So Esther is a young, beautiful Jewess. And so it turns out that Xerxes is a little lonely, and he is missing Vashti. And so his advisors say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get all the beautiful women to come, and you can pick some to be in your harem. You can pick them. So they bring in all these women, and Esther was singled out and brought in as well. And of course, she's gorgeous, and she makes the cut. And so she's given some really good advice by a eunuch who says, here's what you do for him to notice you. Here's what you do to stay here, and then, you kind of live the life, right? So she does this, and she ends up catching the king's eye, and he ends up choosing her to be the next queen. Now, keep in mind, she is a Jewish woman, okay? But it's not really known that she's Jewish. And I read this interesting thing in my chronological Bible that said at this time, the people that were the people of the diaspora, the ones that who had been dispersed and who had not come back into gone back into the Holy Land, gone back to their own place, they were kind of underground. They lived there. Still had their religion. They lived in their ways, but they didn't necessarily. They weren't evangelists. Okay, they weren't trying to win anybody over. They were very quiet until the note that I read in my chronological Bible was that until they were pushed, they did not make a scene. Okay, so King Xerxes had no idea that he had made a Jewish woman his queen. I don't think that he would have cared, right? But so one of the guys inside, his name Haman, was embarrassed and decided he hated the Jews. And that's a whole long story. And not really necessary to while we're talking about Esther. And he decides he wants to kill all the Jews. He especially has a beef with Mordecai, who is Esther's cousin, uncle / dad. She treats him, she respects him like she would her father. Okay. That's kind of who raised her after her parents passed away. So there's this thing that I'm going to kill all the Jews, especially Mordecai. I'm killing all the Jews. And Mordecai comes to, because Esther has no idea. And Mordecai comes to Esther and he's like, here's what's going on. We are in trouble. The Jews are in trouble. These are your people. You have to do something. You have to do something for us. That's where the verse, where everybody knows this verse. And in context, it is 4:14, Esther 4:14, I believe. Let me make sure I'm getting my number right. Because he goes to her and says, well, let's start with 13, shall we? Let's just start with 12. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this. That verse, for such a time as this, is repeated so much. And so for such a time as this, and then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day, and I and my maids will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. So the other thing is, the queen you couldn't just show up and say, hey, Xerxes. She couldn't go, honey, I need a word with you. Can we have a little chat? It's not how it worked. He had to summon her in order for her to have an audience with him. And she, hearing what was going to happen to her people, she was, counseled by Mordecai, you've got to say something or they're all going to die. You may be there for just this reason. God may have allowed you and put you in this position just for this reason. What are you going to do? Don't think that it's going to save you if he finds out you're a Jew. If they find out, you're probably be right here with the rest of us. She takes it seriously. And she's like, y'all are fasting, I'm fasting. And what was fasting in that time? That was like the utmost devotion, and when you were really looking for discernment. That's what the Jews used fasting for. It was, and people still, I've never fasted like that. I just really hadn't been called to, I don't think, because I think the Lord knows that I would be horrible at it. Just because I'm always like, but what am I going to eat next? root. I mean, maybe I should fast. Maybe this is my call to do it. Anyway, I think I would have the wrong attitude about it, right? But the Jews do this for discernment when they were really looking for divine intelligence, when they really wanted to see what God wanted for them, when they wanted it to be. And what I've heard from people who do fast is that you're laser focused, the clarity that comes. And so she's fasting, the people are fasting and in prayer and in worship doing this, and she sure enough goes to the king. And he doesn't kill her. And she presents the case. And Mordecai, it should be mentioned that Mordecai had done a great thing for the king. And the king knew him. The king knew that Mordecai had saved his life, had really kind of been there in a time when he needed to have somebody to have his back. And Mordecai had been really, really great to him. So he knew who he was. He did not know that he was related to Esther. And she goes in and she says, listen, there is a plot to kill the Jews. They are my people. I am a Jew. I am Jewish. These are my people. There is a plot to kill them. And the king listens to her. And the Jews that are in Persia are spared. And you may be thinking, so Emily, what's the point of this story? Why are we even talking about Esther? When I was really thinking about it, what struck me is Esther was Esther. She was who she was. She didn't change. She didn't get rid of those things that were different about her. She just lived her life. She was who she was. And when push came to shove, that background, her people, God, was where she stood firm. And that is so hard these days. It is so, well, at any days, anybody, it's so hard to take that stand. Maybe especially in the age of social media. I mean, I can't, I'm not going to lie about it. I mean, there are times when I say things that I'm like, okay, this is going to be out somewhere. And there might be someone that this really offends and who decides to be really ugly about it. Okay. But I believe this, and I believe that the Lord wants me to, say this. I'm not just out here talking about whatever I want to talk about. I look for, maybe I should be fasting. Here's the fasting coming back in. I wait for what I feel the Lord wants me to teach. It's hard to do that. And Esther had a lot to lose. Xerxes could have been like, yeah, I hate the Jews. What gross. I mean, can you imagine now? Can you imagine nowadays if this woman that you've married who is gorgeous and you don't really know anything about her except you like to look at her. I mean, if she comes in and all of a sudden she's a Jew and you are like, do what? This should have been information that I was given. I should have known this before now. This would have been important to know. Can you imagine? But she sticks to her faith and she sticks to her people. And she says, these are my people. I am a Jew. There is a plot to destroy them. Please, don't let this happen. And it didn't. It's also interesting to note that in the book of Esther, God doesn't speak to anyone. You don't see God. I mean, this is just a story. I mean, they talk about God right here in this little part. They talk about God. Mordecai talks about, I mean, you can tell that this is a part of who they are, and that the Jews are part of who they are. And this is a story that's supposed to build them up. It happens, you read about Esther, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther are grouped together, and Esther happens before Ezra and Nehemiah. Um, so before this is while they're still not in captivity, yet not all of them have gone back, come out of exile. But there's not really any mention of God in Esther. Yet here it is in the Bible. That verse, for such a time as this, is so well known. Because how many times, if you, in your circumstances and where you are, that you say, who knows, I could be in this situation right now. I mean, this could be for such a time as this. That I have to make this statement, that I have to take this action, that I have to do this for such a time as this. Maybe this is my purpose in life. Esther was put in this position to save the Jewish people from a Persian king. And she did it. She didn't chicken out. She didn't just keep her mouth shut. It would have been easy for her to keep her mouth shut and to no longer associate with her people. But she didn't. When you are in places that you have influence, you might be asked to take a stand. Will you be like Esther? Will you do it? Will you stand firm in your faith? Man, what a statement. Jesus loves you.